Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So I just wanted to sit down and talk about Elden Ring because it's the game that literally everyone on the planet is talking about, and I wanted to get in on that good SEO traffic. And I thought the best thing to do would not be to sit here by myself and talk to you guys like a chump, but to bring in a really good friend. But I couldn't find one, so we got Frank instead.
Dude, I knew
Frank,
that was coming.
you want to introduce yourself?
100%. I was like, I'm not your friend, asshole.
Damn.
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Frank. Not a friend,
Damn.
acquaintance. I know Daniel in passing. we Discord here and there. But yeah, guys, I'm Frank. FranklyGaming, YouTube. I do YouTube, Twitch. I'm on Facebook too. So if you have a grandma or grandpa, let them know. I'd love to have them on the stream. But yeah, I just do the gaming content, kind of like Daniel. Yeah, we're good buddies. So we talk gaming. So yeah.
Cool. So I just wanted to start with some like surface level conversation so that we could sort of drill into it.
Sure.
So I figured I would start with that. First of all, I think this game's amazing, right? I think this is like probably going to end up being my game of the year. Like God of War's probably going to get delayed out of the year, and Starfield is up in the air. So I think this is probably going to end up being my game of the year. I only have some very minor complaints with it, which are basically that I don't love how much reused content there is, and I don't like some of the like weird difficulty spikes. But overall, I think this game is like one that people should study for future games. What do you think?
No, yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, no, the way you put it is literally perfect. It's hard to explain. I feel like the game feels like an odyssey more than a game. There's so many moments where you're like, oh my god, there's this entire zone that's completely optional. And that was the coolest boss I've ever seen in my life, and that was an amazing piece of music. Like, there's so many moments in this game where your jaw's on the floor, and it's definitely one of my favorite games of all time. Like, no questions asked. Like, I'd say that easily for sure. There's definitely problems too, though, right? Like, you can tell there's a reason they were able to make so much content, right? It's like, oh, that's weird. I think I fought this boss like 4 times, but that's fine. He's well designed, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
So there's definitely some corners cut, and also the storytelling is really interesting, but it also can be too convoluted at times. There's a lot of minor issues, like you said, but overall, this is, like you said, this game should be studied, like how it's designed. I think open worlds will change because of it, and then it's a good game.
For sure, man. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that like because there is a lot of reused content, but I think a lot of that is just because of the size of the open world that you're playing in, right? And so I almost wonder if like maybe they made it a little bit too big, but like it's that sort of give and take where I feel like in some areas it really helps it, and in other areas it might hurt it a little bit. But like even the areas where it hurts it, I feel like it's not too bad, right? Like because you'll go to different areas and it'll be like Caelid is the horrible poison swamp that's in every From game, right?
Yeah.
And then you get up into the snow area and there's like a volcano area, and it's like every area feels really different and has different enemies in it, and is like it honestly almost feels like a completely different game in comparison to some other things that I've played recently, like Halo Infinite, where it's the same like Pacific Northwest area for the entire game. And I think that there's such a huge amount of like density and depth in everything that they put into that game, where it's like you can just be riding around and randomly hit a wall because you're fighting some other thing, and then the wall opens up and it's like, oh hey, there's a dungeon here, and this dungeon has another dungeon underneath it, and there's 4 bosses, and it's like I guarantee, like I think at my last count, my boss count was at like 130, and I guarantee I probably missed like another 40 or 50 straight up.
Well, yeah, like when you talk with friends about the game or anything, they'll literally tell like these insane stories, and you're like, what? Like,
Right.
For example, we were talking about what is it, Millennia, I think, right? Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah.
Before the podcast, and on my first playthrough, I didn't even get to that part of the map. Didn't even know she existed. There's an entire tree area that's absolutely amazing. Probably my favorite zone in the whole game, and I just never even saw it.
Right. Absolutely.
Originally. And going to your original point too, I actually completely agree. I made a video about it too, talking about the length of Elden Ring.
I'll put a link in it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's exactly what you said. There's so many trade-offs. Like, oh, the bosses are reused. There's some assets that get reused, or like move sets. But on a whole, I think it was such a good decision, because that feeling it gives you of just being like, oh my god, like I didn't even know this part of the map existed, and I just found a secret tunnel into an entire zone. that's like an entirely separate thing with multiple bosses, its own backstory. Like you can't substitute that feeling that Elden Ring gives you of being like I said before, it's an odyssey. It's like a real adventure. Like you can't substitute that, and part of that is the game being massive. Like it has to be because it's that bewilderment you get when you just see it and you're like, no way. Like this is like it's actually this crazy. You know what I mean? Even though you have reused assets, it being that big and grand is such a big asset to why the game's great. I feel like.
Right, and I feel like in a lot of places where the assets are reused, it's in ways that make sense. Like I understand that like it is kind of like a time saving, maybe corner cutting thing, but like the fact like okay, so there's tile sets that are reused, right? Like you go into the same catacombs a bunch of different times and they're shaped different, but like it's the same tile set basically, and usually a lot of the same enemies.
Skeletons,
But yeah, but like in the narrative of the world, like it makes sense, right? Because it's like these are all these different catacombs that always lead down to where the roots of the Erd tree are, because there's this whole thing about like whenever it's people's time they want to return to the Erd tree or something. Like it's this whole cycle of death and rebirth that is like a huge part of the story of the game. And a lot of those end up having the same bosses. Like I fought that watchdog Erd tree watchdog thing like 3 times, but it was always in those same things, so it makes sense because he's a watchdog for the thing that he's in that like so you know what I mean. Or like the Erd tree avatars that show up at multiple different Erd trees throughout, like minor Erd trees throughout the map. Like it makes sense. You know, I think that the thing that I really like about this game is just that, like, when you're exploring this open world, it doesn't just feel like it's this big empty thing with, like, nothing in it, right? Or just randomly generated things. Like, it genuinely feels like every single thing that's in this map was placed with a purpose, right? And the characters interact in a way that I feel like they don't in other FromSoft games, right? So you'll, like... Yeah, so a lot of the times in FromSoft games, it'll be the sort of thing where you'll like meet Siegmeyer and he'll be like sitting in front of a gate, and then he's like, the gate's closed, can't get it open, and then you go and ring a bell and the gate opens and he'll be like, hey, thanks dude, you opened the thing, and then you'll find him later. Whereas in this game it's more like Siegmeyer's there because he's working for this person who you meet in a different place, and then like they have their whole team, and it's like there's like factions and stuff that are, I feel like, a lot more like Ranni's faction, right? Where it's her and Blyde and I think his name's E.G., the like giant blacksmith.
Yeah, it's E.G.
The one sorcerer guy with the big hat who's a huge asshole. Like,
oh no, I don't remember his name. I hate that guy.
It starts with an S. I don't know, but like that's such a cool team. Or like the people who hang out at the Round Table Hold, or the people who are at Volcano Manor. Like the characters in this game, I feel like, are a lot more easily to get attached to than they are in previous FromSoft games, where like you would still, I mean, there were still characters in previous FromSoft games who you would love, right? Like everyone loves Solaire, right? But
well, I don't know. I never played the FromSoft games, which, by the way, people should know. You played them all, and I haven't played any, which is kind of a cool dynamic.
Right.
But yeah. Besides that.
But like, I feel like this world is better realized than any other previous FromSoft game, right? So the characters interact with each other, where it's like, the Volcano Manor will have you track down and kill somebody who's related to somebody from Round Table Hold.
Yeah, that is true.
Like, Ranni's mage friend is working with that other mage girl who has a whole quest line that goes to Raya Lucaria. Like, everything is connected in a way that doesn't happen in other FromSoft games. And it's really interesting to, like, pull on those threads and see where they lead.
Yeah, and I feel like we talked about this off stream a little bit too, but that sense of kind of world building and the way the story unfolds is so interesting to me, because it sounds like they kind of did that in previous FromSoft games, but it's just done better, as you were saying here. But yeah, it's so interesting that it's just very subtle, and like you said, or you'll find something in the world that relates to the Round Table Hold, and you're like, what does this mean? Like, why is this here? How does this connect to these people in this place I've been the whole game that I thought was less sinister than I thought, or things like that. The way the story unfolds, it's interesting, because I feel like everything about these games is a lot about difficulty and hardness and things, right? And even in the story, it makes you work for it, right? Like you get an item and you need to read the descriptions. If you got to open up your inventory, read the descriptions and be like, and uncover the story for yourself. But it just shows that trusting the player and trusting that they have the capability to battle difficulty, and just giving them a good tool set to do that and a fun world to explore it in, it's so much more rewarding then just getting a quest, and then you get a map marker, right? And it says go to Volcano Manor because apparently
Right.
there's some bad people there. They're doing bad things, and then you go there and you're like, and it's like find this girl. You know what I mean? It's like no, you just see a giant volcano in the distance. You go, you find a way
Right.
there. You get into the manor. You join the cult. Like and things happen, right? And it's so much more organic, and you have to, like you said, and if you were paying attention, you see all these connections, like you said, between Volcano Manor, the Round Table Hold, and it becomes so much more rewarding. I feel like because of that.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I think that's the big place in which switching the formula of Souls to an open world really helps it, where it's just like it makes the game so much more dense, and you're able to have so many more bosses and so many more characters, and sort of I think maybe it also helped that they brought in a professional author in George R. R. Martin to help with some of those things, because like George R. R. Martin, like his whole thing in all of his books is like this interconnective webs of like this person was dating this person and then that person killed that person's mom, and so I feel like maybe that influence came from him a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder how much she actually affected the.
Honestly, probably not a ton. I think that
they just want his name. Yeah.
There's some names that I feel like he came up with, like the Dung Eater. That feels very George R. R. Martin for some reason. I don't know why, but like there's a couple in there where it's
I like this guy.
Where it's like some of these feel very Game of Thronesy. Okay. But so I feel like that's where it really helps is like in just the depth and the breadth of the world, right? Mm-hmm. But some of the places where I feel like it doesn't help is that because of that FromSoft formula of like not holding your hand, which I love and I think is overall a good thing, it does make doing some of the quests like really convoluted and hard.
Oh, dude, there were some. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna be honest. I looked up on Google. I was just like, at some points, I was like, because I remember one specifically was on Ronnie's quest. You had to sit at some of the sacred sites and then like talk to the doll. Right. But I just didn't make that connection. Like when I picked up the doll, I wasn't like, time to go sit at a sacred site at every single sacred site and talk to the doll. But it was like I had to do it at like multiple specific locations, and I was just like, well, I mean, maybe a little more guidance there could have been nice, like a little footsteps going over there or something. You know what I mean? So there's definitely it's they didn't do it perfectly, but basically I think the style of game they ushered in, and they've been doing this for a while now, but in an open world is much better. Like I'd rather have that challenge and maybe need to Google here and there than just be like, okay, it's a Ubisoft checklist. It says kill 1 of 3 boars. There's another boar. I literally have a pointer to the boar. Like I'm basically just on a conveyor belt right now, pressing buttons. Like, so I like what they did for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Like I think, and I know people have been fighting about this one, but like I do genuinely think that the game would benefit not from giving you like a quest marker where it's like go over there, it's 400 meters away, but even if it was just a journal where it was like, hey, Blyde said that we have to go fight Radon now, so that I know like, okay, the next thing for this storyline is to go fight that guy. I don't know who Radon is or where he is, but like that's the next step of this. Like that would help.
Yeah.
So much.
You're exactly right. That is exactly what's happening, because you don't want to go back and be like, well, yeah, it was too convoluted. Let's just start kind of showing him where everything is. It's like, no, just have a journal. And it just has these markers like Ronnie, like, and it would be you go into Ronnie. It's like I did this to Ronnie, and then this happened, and Blythe said this, and the last entry is like you said, I have to go fight Radon, someone named Radon, apparently somewhere in this area, like you know what I mean. And then you have to figure it out. But yeah, because especially if you don't play the game for a while and then you come back, sometimes you're like, wait, who was that again?
Right.
And the characters will just be like, yeah, go find him in the Sorrow Forest, and you're like, the what? Like the who?
Yeah, like I was looking up how to do different endings at one point, and I was like, okay, which of these are feasible? Because I just wanted, because full disclosure, I wanted to get a different ending than Frank got, and he did the Ranny quest, which was the one I was also going towards, and I wanted to have a different ending for the sake of this, so that we could talk about it. And I was looking through it, and I was like, there's a ending for if you do the Dung Eaters quest. There's an ending for, and it was like, I don't want to do some of the, and then I got down to the one that was like, for Fia, the deathbed companion, who's like the hug mommy, who just like hugs you in Round Table Hold. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I didn't even realize that she had a quest, because like for me, the only thing that I knew that she did is like she'll hug you and she'll give you this like something blessing that like takes away 5% of your health, and I was like, no thanks. And so I never hugged her, because I was like,
doesn't feel worth that's it. Why I didn't know she had a quest either.
Yeah, so. But like at a certain point in an area that you can completely miss, called like Deep Root Depths or something, that is like, I didn't even know it was in the game until the point that I looked up this ending. if you go there and then you do a really convoluted like platforming puzzle up a bunch of routes, you can find an area that has a big corpse, like a big alien monster corpse, and then you get invaded by like a bunch of people who are like simps for Fia, and if you kill them, then she'll show up and be like, "Hey, you killed my simps. Guess you're my simp now." And you're like, "Cool," and then like you can get an ending that way. And I would have never known that. Like, there's no way to find
and who
that.
would, dude? Anyone that says they figured that out on their own, it's like, okay,
right? Like,
let's be real. Like, I don't know.
The only other way I can think of finding it is that like a lot of the ending quests, at least, ended like a specific boss that you have to have done the quest to get to that point. So if you were just looking at like a list of bosses and you were like, that one's got a really weird name, why have I not written to that one? Because like the one at the end of her quest is called like Lich Dragon Flashes. I'm not even gonna try. But it's it's wild, right? And so if you were looking through a list of bosses and you were like, where is that? Then maybe, but even then, like, you're still Googling it to find it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, sorry.
No, like, to be clear, like, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Like, I love that there's things in this game that are hard to uncover, and that, like, there will probably be new endings and new storylines and maybe even new NPCs that are found in this game, like, a year from now. And I think that's awesome. But I wish that when I found those people and they told me what to do, I didn't have to remember those things, because I'm dumb and I'm not going to remember those things.
No, you hit the nail on the head. That's 100% right. I think as we go on, hopefully people can find ways to kind of refine the formula. It's just too much, right? It's kind of like it's like a sommelier, right? Where it's like it's kind of cool to like know about wine and stuff, but then there just becomes a point where it's like you're just being a wine snob. Like let's chill. Like you don't need to be so convoluted that like you have to climb up a weird tree to get to a character that then tells you about her lost like stepsister who like knew this ancient god who actually is on the other side of the tree, but you have to go into a parallel reality. It's like. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to have to Google, and in theory, you don't have to Google for Elden Ring. I'm sure there's going to be people in the comments being like, "Well, I actually never Googled and figured it all out."
Right, and like you can get to an ending. Like the game does a decent job of guiding you like to the different demigods and stuff that you have to beat to get to the end. Like if you just didn't Google anything and you just followed the Sites of Graces. You'd probably get your ass whooped pretty consistently, because if you're not exploring and doing all that other shit and leveling up, then you're going to get spanked by some of those guys. But like you could finish the game that way theoretically.
Oh yeah.
But like you're not going to find, like you're not going to do Randy's quest without Google. Like you're not. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to know, like, I've got to go to this spot and then there's a wolf up there that I have to hear through all the fighting or whatever that I'm doing. And then I have to know to go back and talk to this other character who's at a church and is not really a character at all. He's just dressed up like Santa Claus. And then he'll tell me, "Oh, hey, you saw Blind. You can snap," and he'll jump down and talk to you and then start a quest. It's like, and that's how am I supposed to know that?
Well, dude, especially as we said before, right? I've never played any FromSoft game. So I know some of the old FromSoft games, they kind of have some things like that, right? But like, so for example, when I first was playing Elden Ring, my first FromSoft game ever, that guy told me like, go to the forest and snap, but I was like barely paying attention. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, okay. And then later when someone was like, you should do Ronnie's quest line, I had to look it up. I was like, oh my God, I literally had to go find this obscure forest you were talking about in this one little small part. And then I hear a wolf sound. I have to remember that. And then I have to pull out the emote and snap at the right spot. And then he's going to come down. Like that's just too much, you know? Like I think you could have the same sort of experience of like bewilderment and wonderment and not be like, you have to use Google to get to the cool stuff.
Right.
Because there's so much cool stuff in requests that you could just not see. Yeah, so.
Man, and you combine that with like some of the stuff that came out after the fact where it's like, hey, there's invisible walls that you have to hit 50 times for them to go away. Or like, hey, if you do a certain gesture in a certain part of the map while wearing a certain set of clothes, it'll make a ladder appear. And it's like, I'm never going to find any of this. Like, that's not, it's just not going to happen. And like, I'm okay with that. Because I have to.
It's funny though. That might be part of the reason the game is so successful, though. I'm sure we might discuss that in this podcast. But it's that convolution because of the internet era and how it is nowadays. Like that stuff goes viral, and that makes people go, "No way!" And it makes people interested in the game. So it almost has a positive effect as well. But
no, yeah, I totally get that. Because like one of the things that I love about this game is that it because it is that convoluted and it is so hard to find things like that, it even even with like having the internet, it reminds me of like playing games when I was a kid, right, on like the PS2, where you'd be playing a game and then you would go to talk to your friend. They'd be like, oh, well, did you know about this? And like, hey, there's this boss and all that. And like, even with the internet, you're probably still not going to find some of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So like, this is the first game in a very long time where it felt like there was that sort of like communal aspect to it, where like I would talk to you and you would be like, oh yeah, I found this guy and he's over here doing all kinds of crazy shit, and I'd be like, did you see that invisible monkey dude? And you'd be like, what?
Never saw him.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like that's such a cool aspect of it that most games just can't have anymore, because like even really good games, like the games that people love and that win all the awards, like God of War or Horizon or whatever, like they're very linear. So really the only things that you're talking about at the water cooler are like, hey, what about that part of the game? That was a pretty cool
That
storyline.
cutscene was
What about the
sick.
acting?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Which is what makes movies great. But games, that's why it opens up this whole other realm. Because that's why Elden Ring is a game so many people are falling in love with too, I think. Because that communal aspect, like you said, right?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite things, honestly, about this game is just it's the first time in a really long time where I would look through my friends list and my Discord list, and it would be like Elden Ring, Elden Ring, Elden Ring, Elden Ring, all the way down, right? Like everyone was playing it because it just became this thing. And I honestly, that was one of the things that I kind of wanted to talk to you about, because this is your first FromSoft game, so I wanted to figure out. My neighbor's dogs are freaking out. They'll shut up soon. But I wanted to figure out. They live in an apartment with like 2 giant German shepherds, which I don't think is a great idea. But regardless, because this is your first FromSoft game, I want to know sort of like, what was it that brought you into it? Because it has taken off in a way that other FromSoft games just haven't. And I'm going to mute myself until they shut up.
Yeah, sorry. I'll try not to laugh because that's hilarious. Yeah, and like in terms of why, it's hard for me to be completely honest, because I didn't play the old games, right? I want to now because of Elden Ring, but I didn't play the old games, so it's hard for me to be like, well, it's just better because it is. Like I didn't play the old ones, I don't know. I think what it is though is it's kind of what we were just saying, right? Elden Ring just hit the mainstream in a way most games don't. Like, so most of my like friends from like college and things, they're just like Call of Duty bros. Like they're just playing Call of Duty. They might play Apex here and there. That's it, right? They're not playing single player. They're not playing any Elder Scrolls, anything like that, right? But everybody has this, and they're messaging me like, dude, what do I do here? What do I do here? Like everybody in the friend group's getting it. Everyone's hanging out doing that stuff, and I think it just comes down to one, it's something that's different. It's like the Fortnite effect, right? Like when Fortnite came out, the biggest thing going for it was different. Like it had building and it was a battle royale. And battle royales were kind of new at the time. There was PUBG, but it was new, right? It was something crazy, and certain things just hit at the right time, and it just works, right? Like gaming's been growing like crazy recently. We got to keep that in mind too. Everyone's been trying to get consoles. Everyone's been trying to get PCs. Gaming's getting way bigger than it even was, and was already huge. And this is a hardcore game that does give you a lot of ways to get into it, I guess, if that makes sense. It's very hardcore, but there's so many like weapons you can use that make it easier, or experiences, and just because of the stories you can tell. It's exactly what you said. It's the stories and your own journey that you go on with this game when you discover that the map is way bigger than you thought. When you discover Lindale and it's a whole new city, it's those stories you make in your head and between friends, just like you said, like games were before the internet and before you had a guide for everything, right? It's like it feels, it's the same thing we said at the start of the podcast. It feels like an odyssey. It feels like a journey, and everybody wants to go on a good journey. Everybody wants that, and there's finally a really good one. Yeah, I think that's why.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because it is that thing where it's like, this game is amazing. I don't necessarily know how it stacks up against some of the other really good FromSoft games. Like, I can very easily see people still preferring like Bloodborne or Sekiro or Dark Souls 3, because that more linear format of the game, I think, maybe works a little bit better, especially in terms of like difficulty scaling. Because because like in this game, especially if you're new to the game and to the series and you don't know, like, hey, exploring and like figuring out these other things is probably really important before you go into that boss, then you're gonna do like you're gonna get to Margit and he's gonna slap your cheeks, and you're like,
I know
you're not gonna beat him, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it works in the other way too, where I feel like okay, I did everything I could before I started fighting demigods, because I was like, demigods sound like tough bosses, right? So like before I started fighting Godric, before I fought Renala, I was doing everything else I could. I basically 100%ed Limgrave and did a big part of Liurnia before I even fought Godric. So because of that, I basically just like steamrolled those two areas. and I even steamrolled like the vast majority of Caelid, but then I got
that's surprising. Yeah,
there were parts of it that were hard. Like there's that one where it's like the putrid crystalline trio that was
oh yeah,
straight up
oh
BS.
dude, don't even get
I hate them so
started.
much. I hate them so much. But regardless,
God.
like you know, so I did very well in those areas, and even like the first half of the plateau, I was pretty much one-shotting most bosses. But then you get into Lindale, and it's like, what if you didn't? And it's just like all of a sudden the difficulty spikes like way up, like crazy high.
Yeah, no, you can tell. I feel like their design philosophy was like, well, it's so massive and so open world. What we're gonna do is like, there's just gonna be these gates where like, you know, Margit's the first one, like get good, and then there's like all these other, like you said, you get to Lindale, get good, like. You know what I mean? Because it's too hard. Because they don't know where you're gonna go. Like they don't know. Maybe you'll go south, and maybe you'll just be insane and get Margit, and then you just keep going, right? It's like, so it's such an interesting thing you bring up, because also my experience with this game was at the very beginning was very hard, because especially because I've never played a FromSoft game. I was like, oh god, like this is why these are hard. Then it got quite a bit easier because I figured out how to play the game, and like I just happen to like dodging style games. It happens to be like what I'm good at, so it wasn't that hard. You know, got through Margit, Godric was easy as hell, like, and just started crushing everything. Ronaldo was easy, and then there was another difficulty spike like Lindale, I would say, but then I just started getting weapons and crushed everything up until the final boss. And when I say crush, I mean that like this game was straight up easier than playing Neopets as a 5-year-old.
Hey, Neopets is hard. Let's not talk shit on Neopets.
Oh, that's true. Fuck yeah. No, that's a good point. That shit was tough. But like the end of this game, because I had Rivers of Blood, and this was before people knew it was OP. I think this was before they buffed it too, actually. Which is funny because it was insane before they buffed it, in my opinion. So I don't know why they did. But
it's like that
anyways,
and Moonveil, I think, are like the two super like meta weapons right now, and they're both katanas, of course, because
of course
the weeb class is gonna just rock this game.
Well, because I was using weaker stuff before, and even that wasn't too bad. But then I got those, and the game became. I'm talking like I'd see the craziest, scariest looking boss. I'd be like, piece of cake, slash dead, like blood loss. See ya, you know. Yeah, so it's yeah, true. So it's a really interesting discussion because the scaling is kind of whack in this game, but it would have been so hard to make it, right? Like, how do you even make it?
Well, it's weird, right? Because I tried to play this like a more traditional Souls game, I would say, where I went for a quality build, which is, if you don't know, it's just like a balance between strength and dex. And there's a lot of weapons that do that pretty well. Like basically any great sword you can, or really any normal weapon you can spec into being a quality build with, like, you know, you can change it to be like, this is a blood weapon now. This is frost. Well, one of them is quality. And that's the build that I usually use on my first playthrough through like all Souls games, right? So like Dark Souls 1, 2, 3. I don't really know if it applied to Bloodborne, but maybe a little. Okay. It's like that's always what I do, because it's just sort of the bread and butter. Like it's the comfort food build for me, right? And for a lot of the game, it worked perfectly fine, right? Like I could get through the game pretty easily, but I feel like at a certain point, if you're not messing with like blood loss or frostbite, and you're not using the mimic tier, and you're not doing some of these other things, that like you're just not going to finish the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
it gets tough without
like it. There's some really so there's some enemies that just like, and I don't know if it was specifically my build, but they gave me such a hard time, right? I'm talking about
like
the big hands, those
dudes,
like they messed me up consistently. Like at a certain point, I just stopped fighting them. I just ran from them. The Iron Maidens,
I was like me with everything,
right? Like the Iron Maiden things that like grab you and pull you in. Like I could kill them, but it would like always take one or two heals, right? Or when you get to the capital, there's that one guy. He's an enemy type that you fight a lot, where it's just like a guy with a crossbow in one hand and a stabby sword in the other with a rapier. But in the capital, really he shoots 3 in a row and they explode. And that was my entire health bar if he hit me. I was like, okay, great. And there's like 3 of them.
Yeah, dude, vigor's so important in this game. I feel like you have to like get so much vigor to not get one-tapped, especially by the way.
Well, it's important for the exploration, but I feel like no matter how high your vigor is, there's bosses who will still hit you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, no, that's a good point. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point.
If
you get it high enough,
for sure. Yeah, like, man. So I really struggled with a lot of those enemies, and then like, it does kind of feel like and I know you haven't played Dark Souls 2, but there's some areas that feel very Dark Souls 2 in like the bad way, where there's one of the things that people really complained about Dark Souls 2 is that a lot of the enemies were just super spammy, and they would just use the same move over and over again, or just like really fast projectiles. And so like those marionette archers who shoot like 10 arrows in a second, or like basically any of the casters at Araya Lucaria, like some of that stuff is really irritating, and if you don't have a build that like specifically counters that, you're gonna get messed up.
Well, dude, a great example of that is, like you said, at Raya Lucaria, when you first go in and there's those two mages at the top of the staircase.
Oh, God.
Bro, I could not. I was dodge rolling. I was like, run. They were just like, nope. Boop,
right.
Boop,
absolutely.
Like, I was just
and then you get close to them and they just smack you with the book. And
no,
like,
that's what I mean. Yeah. No, and they just didn't have a care in the world. I was like, this is hell.
You're like,
but,
oh,
yeah, not the book.
Or like, oh, I forget what that one enemy's called. I want to say it's called like Royal Revenant or something. It's that one that's like, it's like a spider. it's like a grafted monster that like comes up out of the ground, and he'll attack you with like 13 or 30 or something attacks just in a row, and like healing over him is wild. And one of the areas that I got to, which is completely optional and somehow simultaneously my favorite area of the game and total bullshit, which is the Halig tree, which is where Millennia is.
Oh yeah, that's where I'm at.
If you go to the bottom level of that, there's like 3 that spawn back to back, and it's like,
oh wow, okay.
No, like that's not happening.
No, not today.
Right? But honestly, I think that like the Halig tree is a really good example of what I'm talking about with like the different builds, where like I was able to get through the entire game with a quality build, either by just getting good or leveling up a little bit extra, or you know, worst case, or like using the summon ashes, because I feel like you really have to use those. Like a lot of the bosses,
especially in the double bosses.
Yeah, a lot of the bosses are very clearly like built around the idea of you having those, right? So I don't feel bad about using them at all. I know there's some people who are like, you can't use the ashes, and it's like,
dude, they're
okay, good luck, bud.
Man. They are the worst. But yeah, anyways.
Yeah, but like I got to Millennia, and straight up for my build, she was not feasible. Like you could have gotten good, but you would have like basically had to not get hit at all. Because,
perfect, yeah.
Yeah, because so
but
like
she heals, which is insane.
Right. So here's the thing about Millennia, just the breakdown of why she's ridiculous. She's a normal enemy type, right? Or like a normal humanoid enemy type. So you can't get underneath her and sort of cheese her out that way like you can with some bigger enemies. She's got really strong combos that she has one that's like 3 hits in a row, and if she hits you at any point, you're going to get hit with the rest of the combo because you're just stun locked. She's got her waterfowl dance, where she like jumps in and does like this huge like blade storm around her, and she'll do 3 or 4 of those in a row, and it does not matter how far away from you are when she starts that. She will catch up to you by the second or third one. Like
yeah, nope,
like she is crossing that entire arena. And then you take into account the fact that every single time she hits you with any of those moves, the multi-combo hits, she will heal 300 to 400 health with every single hit, even if you block it. Because I could block most of her attacks, but she would just heal, right?
So it's like
I just restarted the boss fight. Great.
Oh yeah, no, that fight that's probably the hardest fight.
Right, and then you get to the second phase, and a lot of bosses, their second phase will start like at the halfway part of their health bar. No, you have to kill her, and then she basically comes back with 80% health, and she's faster and stronger and does Scarlet Rot.
Oh, dude, it's so funny. When I first beat her, instantly killed me on the second phase, and when I first went up to her too, instantly killed me. I was like, oh, okay.
She's the hardest boss in that game. I don't know if she's the hardest boss in FromSoft history, but she is very much the hardest boss in that game. And it's wild because like I got spanked by her for like a weekend. Like I was fighting against her, and I'd fight her like 15, 20 times, and then I would leave and level up some, and I would come back. And eventually I had to just like bite the bullet, and I had to go for the meta build. I put my tail in my hand, and I walked up to Renala with the larval tier and was like, all right, make me a weeb. And I leveled up the Rivers of Blood, and I leveled up the Mimic tier, and I went in there, and I killed her on like my 3rd try.
It makes it so much easier.
Because it turns out the secret to beating her is that you just have to do so much damage so fast that she cannot do anything. You have to kill her so fast that she cannot hit you.
Well, dude, honestly, that's how I felt about... It's interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Blood Loss was a mechanic in other Souls games.
It was. I feel like it's way better in this one, though, and I'm not sure exactly why.
Yeah, I'm like, because to me, my impression is like these games could never have been that hard as long as there was blood loss, because it's just the way it works where it takes off percentage of health on chance per hit. Like that always gives you a chance of just like kind of cheesing something, like, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's an interesting discussion too, and it kind of goes into that difficulty thing, right? Because like you said, certain builds just make this so much easier,
right? And then the thing about that is I had to go and change immediately back to my quality build because I was just not feeling the weeb build with the like huge damage blood loss thing, and it wouldn't have worked against the last boss anyway because he's immune to blood loss. Which I imagine screwed up a lot of people's builds.
Oh, dude, some bullshit.
Right. But it's really weird, right? Because, like, she's the only boss in the game that I feel like, and it's probably just me being tilted, but she's the only one that I feel like was not fair. Like, everything else, I felt like, you know, they were very well balanced. You know, you could level up to get to the point where you could fight them better. You know, there were times where I got to bosses way before I was supposed to and just got completely swamped. But like most of the time, they felt really fair, with the exception of her. And I don't know. It's probably just me being tilted, honestly. Like, you know, I'm not going to be like nerf Millennia, but like maybe nerf Millennia. I don't know.
The reason I'm okay with it is because like she's an optional boss.
Yeah.
And exactly. I like, because if that was like the last boss, I might be like, well. Damn, I just spent 100 hours doing this. Like, I kind of want to beat this now. Like, but but she's optional, and I like the idea of at least one boss in the game just being ridiculous. Like I'd be okay with the boss being even crazier than her, and just being like literally 10 people in the world to beat her. Sucks. Get good. Like, you know what I mean? Like the ultimate Dark Souls boss.
There is one. His name is the Orphan of Cause, and he will slap your shit.
Oh shit! That's cool to me though. And it's like they should, like, or in their DLC, they should literally make a boss where it's like, this is what, like, for the future of these series, this is what you think of when you think of hard boss. Like, literally 100 people.
That's usually how the DLC in these games goes, is that they'll be like, oh, you thought that was hard? What if this time, but there's 2 of them? Or something.
Oh, okay, like, damn, okay.
Like, Dark Souls 2, its bosses weren't too bad, and then they brought in DLC, and it was like, what if, fight Sir Alon, fight the Fume Knight, and you would be like you would straight up, you would grind against that boss for like 4 hours.
Yeah, that's great.
Because you just had to know every single one of their moves.
Yeah, no, see, and like, because that's cool, but you wouldn't want everything to be like that. Because one thing I actually found is someone that this was their first FromSoft game, is these games are hard, but I feel like, and this is why it's so funny to me, there's so many elitists too. It's like, I mean, it depends on your build, right? Yeah, but it's just like, it's not that crazy. Like, you know, most of the bosses are fair, which is good. That's the game design you want. You don't just want to be like, this is ridiculous every time. But, like, it's not as crazy as I thought. Like, because I feel like from someone that had never played these types of games, the stigma was so big. It was just so massive. Like, my impression was every single boss was going to be Millennia. Like, every single time. Like, the first boss was going to be that, and then there was going to be 2 of them, and then there was going to be 3 of them, and one had an attack helicopter, and it was just going to be crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That was my impression of what was going to happen. But it ended up being a lot more fair. And the reason I finally found why people love this game is, it's difficult, but it feels very fair, which I've heard people always say, but it makes so much sense. It's like, and also it's a slower type of difficulty in the sense it's not like when I'm playing Valorant, it's like, oh, you just need to work on your reaction time and you just have to have pixel perfect aim and just get this guy quicker than he gets you. It's like, no, it's like, learn the boss's move. When he goes like this, you dive at the last second to this side towards him, and then so you're closer and you can hit him. And like, it's almost like you're it's less like you're trying to learn a fight and you're more like you're dancing. I feel like it's weird to say, but it's literally, I think that's why these games combat is so satisfying. It's not like other combat. It literally feels like you're dancing with a partner. Like, it feels like you're doing a little duet and you're like dodging, then slide. You know what I mean, though?
No, I totally know what you mean. I mean, like, you'll see videos on YouTube or Twitter of people who are just like beyond good, like way better than I could ever get, and they'll just like they're using emotes to like lay down and like dodge moves and then get back up, and they're like parrying Millennia consistently.
It's slow-mos,
which you can't actually parry her. She just jumps back, so you don't actually get to riposte her, which is bullshit. But like, to be clear, like, you know, I'm just tilted against her, right? She's a great boss, especially her design. Like, her second phase design where her hair grows out and she like has all the butterfly wings and stuff, and she's like this like embodiment of Scarlet Rot is so fucking cool. Like, this game has some of my favorite some of my favorite boss designs, right? Like, Millennia is amazing.
Ancestral Spirit I liked a lot.
The Ancestral Spirit is great. I like I think Morgott and Mog, I think, kind of look the same, but they're super fun to fight.
True.
Right? Like there's just so many really great bosses. And you know, there's plenty of other ones where it's just like, oh, you know, like the Crucible Knight's just a guy in armor, or like, you know, oh, I fought this guy 10 times. But I feel like this game does a really great job on just design elements, and not just with the bosses. Like you go to the Halig tree and you're like, this is a whole nother tree that's like the size of the Erd tree. Like, what's the story behind that? And you look at it and it's like, there's this whole like new faction of people down there and entirely new enemies doing new stuff, and it's so cool, right? And you like, it's so weird to like start at the top of a tree and like work your way down to the roots to fight the thing.
It's so magical, dude. And but also it's just the scale. Like I remember, because like I said, so on my first playthrough I didn't find the Hail tree, but then I was playing with a buddy on his playthrough, and we did. And I was like, dude, you can just—it's a vast city with all these little turns you can go into and different ways to get to the where you're trying to go. And like the scale of it all is insane. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier of like scale and wonderment is so important. And Elden Ring proves that. I think it was it in Red Dead at the very end of the game? There's like a whole new zone that unlocks that like you just had no idea existed. It's completely different. Like Elden Ring does that over and over and over and over again, and it's so cool. Like it's one of the most powerful feelings I've had in a long time in a game, and more games need to do it. Like more games need to act like the game is one thing, and then be like, "Fuck you! There's a giant tree you can climb down."
Right?
Like, because it's so powerful to like be like, "Oh my god!" Like, I'll give you an example. When Starfield comes out, the best thing they could possibly do is the first 3/4 of the game is whatever it is. And then at the very end, that portal in the trailer, you go through the portal and you go to an alien landscape, and there's 3 more planets or whatever, and it's like another like 20, 30 hours of content, and it's completely different. That's what Elden Ring did over and over and over.
Right. I think that's exactly on point, right? Because those first couple areas you go through, like Limgrave and Liurnia, and even the plateau, a little bit less so, but they feel very sort of traditional fantasy, where it's just like, you know, you're fighting like giants and knights, and it's all castles and that sort of thing. It's like a kind of more typical dark fantasy, which is not to say it looks bad. Like you go to Stormvale Castle, and that place is gorgeous, right? But then, you know, every so often you'll take an elevator or you'll open a door, and it's like, what is this? Like you'll take an elevator down from just a random forest, and now you're in this underground cavern with like stars, right? And it's beautiful, and there's enemies down there who are the worst, who shoot you from like 4 miles away.
Oh, dude,
with arrows that
those
are the size of a tree.
Real
What an asshole, right? Or
like
like
map one shot,
yeah. Or like you'll finally get the key to get into the Academy of Raya Lucaria, and you get in there, and you're like, this place is just super cool, like Hogwarts level, like magic shit. Or
yeah, it's like Hogwarts Legacy, but it's just a part of the game.
It's just
like,
oh,
that's just
in there.
it's just in our game because why not? Like okay, like yeah,
right. And you know, like the fact that I put almost 130 hours into this game, and I am confident that there are probably big chunks of this game that I did not find at all. Right? Like there's
did you find the secret location at the bottom of Lindale? The big red boss, yeah, the sewers and stuff. Did you get to like the very bottom where like in the big giant like shaft, and there's a giant red boss at the bottom?
I don't think so.
Oh, see, that part was amazing. I just guessed you didn't because it took me a while. So yes, like, that's an example. You probably didn't see that.
I went into the sewers and I fought. What did I fight down there? I definitely fought like Mog, because there's like a second boss fight that you can do.
Oh, maybe you did. That might have been his name. So maybe you did.
He's just like a normal looking guy. He's not like some big huge red guy. I mean, he does blood loss, so I guess maybe it's a little.
No. Yeah, probably not. But maybe I don't know.
But that's the cool part. Like right? I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's just like an entire area that I completely missed. Like the fact that you go down into the sewers and then you fight one boss and then you hit a wall and an entire new dungeon opens up underneath that, and you're like, what the fuck? Like full disclosure, I beat the game and did not know the sewers existed. And then someone told me about it, and I went back after I had fought the Elden Beast and went down there because like I had just completely missed it. Right? Or like even getting to the Halig tree, like the only reason that I ended up going there was because my roommate at the time was like, hey man, you should really do this quest line because it's like, well,
and it goes back to all these points we've been bringing up. It's such a weird discussion in terms of game design, because it's like, does making these amazing moments really gated in terms of like it's really hard to figure this out on your own? Does it actually make it better? Because like when you get to the Halig tree, you're like, oh my god, like this might be the coolest zone in the game.
Right.
Like I didn't even know, like I didn't discover this on my first playthrough. Like I can't believe, but because it makes the moment so much more impactful instead of just being like, oh, here's your main quest, here's your little map marker, go to here, right here, buddy. Yep, that's
Yeah.
isn't it a cool tree? That's a cool tree, right? Like,
Check that
it's
out. We
yeah,
made
it's
that.
a nice tree. It's a nice
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah. You like our artist, yeah, but
Right.
no, exactly. It's so much more impactful because it's like it's almost there. It's kind of like the mic drop moment. Like, yeah, we don't give a fuck. We'll just make a giant tree and it'll be the
We'll
coolest
just
zone.
put
But no, we don't care.
we'll just
No,
put
you don't
hundreds
have
of
to.
hours of manpower into an area that you may never
Yeah.
see. Like, and
Yeah.
it's but it's like that. When I say it that way, it sounds like a bad thing. But in reality,
Yeah.
like, it feels great because it's like no one pointed you in that direction, right? It was just like it was the agency was completely on you as the player to find this area and do all these things. And like there might have been clues, right, that you found, but the game doesn't point you towards it. Like there's like one of the Ash summons that I had was an archer lady, and she was like, hey, there's a place called Castle Soul, and if we fight the guy there, then we'll get another thing, and then we can go over here and do but like she said that like at hour 10 of the game, and then Castle Soul is hour 110.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, okay, I found the other half of this medallion. What the hell is this?
Yeah, no, that's why a journal, like we were saying earlier, would be amazing.
For sure.
Because it's too complicated.
But it feels so rewarding to be like I found this. Like like I didn't just like follow some steps in a guide or like follow some map markers. Like I found this. This was me. I did this. Like,
oh yeah, 100%. Because a lot of, for me at least, a lot of it was Google, to be fair. But there were a bunch of moments too where I was like, oh my god, I put the pieces together. Like I figured it out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it was like, this is so cool. Like, so yeah, giving the player more agency is so important. But maybe they gave them too much. I don't know. Maybe
It's
just dial it
possible.
back just a tad,
Yeah.
just a tad,
a little bit.
just
Just
a
bring it
little
back
bit.
in.
I'm glad we got away from the Ubisoft type. I hate that style
Oh,
of open world,
absolutely.
but maybe just a tad, just a
Yeah,
journal.
just maybe a
No
little
quest
bit.
markers, like just a little journal, just a little footnote. Like this happened an hour ago. Yeah.
Yeah. But man, I feel like there's so many things that they added into this game specifically that I feel like make the transition to that new style work so much better. Because, you know, like we're saying, like a lot of these things are really hard to find. So like they had to make, it's because it's an open world, so they had to make a lot of changes to make it make more sense, right? And I think like adding the Stakes of America or whatever, so that you can respawn there instead of at a spot of grace, right? Like that saved my life so many times. There were so many times where I would go into like an ever jail and I would just get my absolute ass beat, and it would be like, okay, well I'm gonna respawn just on top of the ever jail again and pick up my souls that are outside of it and then fight the boss again, right? Like that makes it so much more user friendly. Or just having like the spirit summons is really cool, because then you can like, that's basically a whole new build that they've added to the game, where like you could theoretically play this game as like a Pokemon trainer.
Oh, bro, trust me, dude. This little summoner, it's amazing. I love
You
it.
know what I mean?
No, you're so right. I feel like the best way to put it is like the parts that should be difficult, they kept difficult, and the parts that shouldn't, they've left out. Like I saw some people, like when I was streaming the game, some people would just be like, one thing I really wish they still had was like when you had to run like 15 minutes after you died in a Dark Souls boss, and I was just like, really though? Like,
Yeah.
I don't, because like to me that's not good difficulty. Like I get that made you feel happy that you finally beat the game, because like I did this thing most people wouldn't do, but most people wouldn't do it because it's just tedious. And like even if the game's amazing, it's like, okay, you know what, I'm done walking 15 minutes. Like I'm done. Like, you know what I mean? Like the difficulty of the boss and learning the boss and the characters and the moments was making that hard and rewarding was important. But then they streamlined some more things, like you said, right? And it might have some way to go on some of those things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But as someone that didn't play the old games, it feels like they streamlined, like you're saying.
For sure. And like, I mean, it was never like terrible in the old games, but it was definitely worse.
Yeah.
Where, especially if you like didn't find a certain like shortcut back to the bonfire that you lit last, or you know, maybe you didn't hit an invisible wall and open up a spot for a new bonfire that's closer to the boss. Like there's usually something like that for most of those things. Like I can't think of a boss run that was longer than like a minute or two.
Okay, so yeah, maybe it wasn't.
But it's definitely worse for sure. Like that goes without saying. And I think one of the other things that they did is like they added a lot of things that make the game easier in that way, like adding the Sites of America and adding the you know, the spirit summons and stuff. But I feel like they also added a lot of stuff that made it harder. Right?
Interesting.
Like adding
Like,
the ability
like
to change your Ashes of War on your weapon. It lets you sort of customize one weapon in a way that I feel like is, for one, awesome. Right?
Yeah,
The fact
I
that
like
I can,
that, yeah.
yeah, the fact that I can take my, because I was using a flambear's for like the entire game, and the fact that you can take that and just like add a new weapon art to it and stuff, like that's great. But I feel like that also kind of traps you into using the same weapon for too long. Like I know it didn't for you because you were changing your weapons all the time.
Yeah, I was changing shit. Yeah.
Right. But you know, I feel like for a lot of people it'd be the thing where like, okay, well maybe I can just like, what if I change my flambear's from being quality to like bleed, right, or whatever. Or like, this one's gonna sound really stupid, but I feel like adding jumping has actually made it harder. Because
interest really? I would assume make it way
well,
easier.
because in old FromSoft bosses, right, the answer would be like your defensive things were either block, parry, or dodge. Like there were three options, and every attack, one of those things would work, right?
Gotcha.
Whereas now you've added a fourth one, which is some of them you just have to jump over. Like
yeah.
like fighting, I think it's like names like Horalo or something. Like there are ground-based attacks that the best way to deal with them is to just jump over them, right? And so you've added like a whole new aspect to it that people have to deal with. Or the fact that you can fight some of the bosses on horseback, so then you have to be like, okay, well, is this a boss that I should fight on horseback, or is that going to make it harder? Do I have to fight him on foot?
That's a good point.
And like having all these different options is great. Don't get me wrong, I love that. But it does also make it harder. So I feel like they do kind of balance it out in that way, where I do feel like it is very easy for new people to get into, but it hasn't like lost
exactly.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
And it's exactly. It like that goes to the point of like they added good difficulty. Like for example, horse combat. I think it's actually a cool level of difficulty because it adds depth to the combat. For example, right off the top of my head, I would think Fire Giant. I would get on my horse, get right up close to him, jump off, get some hits in, do some dodges, you know, do some backtracks, and then hop right back on the horse when he started doing something crazy, and I'd kind of back out, jump around, and swoop back in, and it made it harder because it was a new kind of skill set I had to use, but it makes the game so much more interesting because it's a new skill set you have to use. Like you're saying, or like when you jump attack people, you like Margit's a good example of like learning to jump attack is kind of helpful there. I felt like, at least for me,
For sure, yeah.
especially with staggers and stuff, or poise or whatever. So yeah, it's like they increased the difficulty in the spots where they should, and they decreased tedium, I guess is the best way to put it in others.
Absolutely. Like I think the fact that they just sort of like, front load isn't the right word, but that's the one I keep coming to. The fact that they sort of like present you with all of the things that people loved about the game, and like the things that people sort of got frustrated with, like really hard bosses like Millennia, like boss runs. Some of those things are still in there at parts. Like there is still I forget what boss it is, but there was definitely still one boss that I ran quite a bit to get back to every single time. And it's like that stuff is still in there, right? Like the identity of FromSoft is still in this game, even though they've changed so much of it, even though they've made it open world, even though they've added all these things that make it a little bit easier. It still feels and plays like a Souls game, and I feel like that's super important, because there are some games that have made the jump to open world and it's just not worked at all.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. It's interesting to think, because like this is kind of like their magnum opus in a lot of ways. Of like they had all these years of like designing these systems, perfecting them, trying new things with like Bloodborne and Sekiro, and then they're like, we're gonna slap that all in a open world and it's just gonna work well. No, but you're right. I feel like what was interesting about this is the systems in Dark Souls, they just worked in an open world so well. Like I'll give you an example. Instead of like it really being heavily reliant on like go to town, get your quests, go do side quests, and like go through the story, it was like just keep killing everything. Like you like that sword, you get that sword. Like see that guy with the cool fire spell, kill him, you get the fire spell. Like it just like their formula for how they even designed games beforehand just kind of fit perfectly into an open world, because it also allowed the game to breathe, because instead of being all these quests and stories you always had to bog the player down with, which don't get me wrong, I love those too. You know, I love those deep stories. Hand holding sometimes, but it was literally just like, it was so easy for them to just be like, here's a world, here's tons of crazy stuff, we're just going to litter the world with all this crazy stuff and little lore tidbits, and you just go do what you want. Because the problem is, it's easy to be like, well, this is what every open world should be, and I like this way more than Ubisoft, but like, how would other open worlds do it? Like, how would Cyberpunk do this? Because like, you need those quests and the story. Like, what are you just going to have a bunch of like gang members everywhere in the entire game, just killing gang members, and you get a cool gun? Like, well, what about all the story? You know what I mean? It's like, it's like uniquely FromSoft was uniquely positioned to pull off an open world like this, which just so happens to be so much more rewarding than other open worlds. So now it's like, whatever, what is everyone else going to do? So
For sure.
I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing what they pulled off with this game. I am curious, actually. Like, you said you got... I'm sort of curious about, like, how our playthrough is different.
Yeah, sure.
I know you changed your build a lot. Were there any that you, like, specifically really liked or specifically really hated?
Honestly, I usually liked all of them because, like, if there's a reason I stuck to a build for even a little bit, I liked it.
Gotcha.
The first one was kind of cool because the first thing I used was, well, originally I was a spellcaster. And then I was like, everyone's like, spellcasting easy. I'm like, fine.
It's really strong in this game.
I was like, fine, I'll use a sword. So I started and I had the dagger that like shoots blood. That thing was pretty good. That's probably the weapon I used the longest. I used that for a long time. Now I was like, I'll switch up. I used ones that are notable. I used when you kill Morgott, I think it was. Was it Morgott? He drops one of the things you can get from the reverences or whatever at the 2 fingers is this giant blade that's like rainbow colored.
Oh,
and
yeah.
its special is like, I love that thing. That thing's shredded.
I never even touched it, but...
Yeah. It's special when you just slash and like a giant flame would explode. And also he'd run up really far, so it gave you a lot of range. I used that. The Rivers of Blood was by far the best one, but I actually only used that at the very end because I found that right before the Fire Giant at that guy, because, you know, to get it, I think you probably know how to get it. The guy summons. And I got that, and then I just cleared all the last bosses.
I felt betrayed by that, by the way, because he was one of the guys who you can summon to help you fight Radahn, and then he showed up, and I was like, no, not like this.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, he's like one of the samurai guys who just like shows up to help you fight that guy. And then he invaded me, and I was like, I thought we was cool. I thought we was walking.
Dude, he was kind of tough, too.
He was.
And probably because he had the Rivers of Blood.
I mean, honestly.
At the time, I didn't know why he was so good.
There's definitely some builds in this game that are, like, way better than the other ones, right? Like if you're using a Bloodlost build or a Frostbite build or Azure Comet, like, if you're using, like, specific casting spells, like, this game is going to be so much easier than it was for me with a quality build.
That's why I want to go through and do a quality build. I didn't know that's, like, what everyone officially called them. I guess that makes sense. But because I barely used any quality weapons, right? Because this was my first time playing, so I just gravitated. I'm like, this seems good, which I was right. I got the Rivers of Blood.
You fucking nailed it, dude.
I got it first time, I guess. So,
I mean, you found the weapon that's really, really good, and you used it. Like, I'm not. Exactly. No one's gonna hold that against you.
Yeah, no, but the reason I say it is because I was always switching weapons, and honestly, I don't even remember all the names, but most of the time they were Bloodlost things. So like that dagger was Bloodlost, that thing from Morgott was Bloodlost, the Rivers of Bloodlost, but most of the other ones weren't. And looking back, I feel like some of the most fun I had was when they weren't, because Bloodlost, or sometimes when you're using magic, it just felt like I feel like a little more. You know what I mean? I want to feel a little more.
Especially when you add the Mimic Terror on top of that, and it's like now we're proccing Bloodlost like every 3 hits. Or like if you're a caster and it's like, okay, now both of us are going to use the big like Azure Comet like Kamehameha thing at the same time and just like cross the entire map and kill this boss in like 4 seconds. Like it's wild. You see some of those videos and it's like, man, I would have loved to have killed that boss in 2 seconds.
Yeah, well, but also what I think it actually probably serves the game well, because this game's so long that like I wonder if like I would get burnt out if like every single time I never was able to use Bloodlost or magic or anything. Like I could never respec to try and fight this boss. Like if I just kept hitting my head against every single boss, it was that much harder. Would I just be like, oh my god, the map just doubled in size. Like I can't do this. Like, you know, like mom, please hold me. Like it's just too much. So.
It always felt good whenever you would unlock part of the map and it would like unlock the part of the island that's like goes off to the edge of the actual map, and you'd be like, okay, I'm done over here. Yeah. This part of the map I have seen.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think, and then there's like a flying part of the map, and you're like, oh god.
Oh, the Pharaoh Mazula place.
Yeah, yeah.
God. That place was wild.
That was so sick. Dude, so many cool zones.
So good.
Dude, it scared me, though, because of the exact thing you just said. I was like, oh my god, I hope there's not, like, 30 of these things, like, in the air. Like, right. And I'm like...
You go back to the regular, right, like, first step, like, the first place you came out, and you look up, and you're like, are there castles? What's up there?
It was funny. Dude, but that's what I meant by this game's an Odyssey. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there were times where I was like, I'm so exhausted.
I'm so tired.
I just fought 30 bosses. Like, this map's just never ending. Like, please end. But then, like, the bewilderment with the world was just so worth it. And then when you finally beat the game, like, literally you'll look back. This is the type of game you'll look back on, and you'll be like, damn. Remember when Elden Ring came out? Remember when I put 130 hours into Elden Ring? Remember those bosses? And remember I beat the game, and I was like, damn. that was fucking so good. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
it's one of those games. That's what I meant by a journey. Like, if every game was like this, I feel like I can't be a game. This is too much. Like, I want to cry. Like, but
it's absolutely that thing. Like I feel like if you play too many like open world games back to back, then you will 100% get burned out after like 2, maybe 3. Like, it's rough. But yeah, man, like one of the things that I'm really interested in this game is seeing what they do with it after the fact, because they've already made some updates that are really surprising to me. Like the fact that the first update like added NPCs.
Yeah,
I was like, wait, what? Or there was I don't know if it was the same update, but there was one where they added like you could look on the map and next to certain spots of grace it would have the little square that said like what NPC was there.
Oh, right? I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's like that was not there at launch, and so I'm really excited to see what they do with that. But
like
even
quality of life things.
Yeah, and like even beyond that, like I'm sure they want to add a journal, but I'm really excited to see like what DLC looks like for this, right? Because every single Souls game, I think, maybe with the exception of Sekiro, has had some amount of DLC.
Well, and this is going to because of the sales. Sure. Like if they didn't have DLC planned, you guarantee the top heads are like, you have DLC planned now.
Yeah.
Like, you can cut whatever you're doing, and we are going to be doing
DLC with Elden Ring.
Yeah, like Elden Ring 2 now. Yeah, like
Elden Ring 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see what they do in the future too.
Yeah. What would you want?
So this is partly comes because I heard a rumor about it.
Okay.
But there was a rumor they were working on an Xbox exclusive, and I don't care about that part. I'd rather everyone.
Yeah, either way.
But the part that was interesting was sci-fi Souls game. And I was like, that sounds so weird, but God, that in theory could be so cool.
It could be really
like
cool.
Imagine like a dystopian, like very like just like the vibes you have in Souls or Elden Ring, but it's like in space. You're in these derelict spaceships, and there's moss and like alien growth everywhere, and like this weird creature comes out, and you have like a gun, but you have to like reload it and dodge it. Like I'm just like. I mean, because to me,
that has been tried before with things like the Surge and even Returnal. I would say doing
that's true. Surge,
but both of those games were like not good. So to see that from would be
and now that they're so big, like whatever they make next is going to be getting like day one. It's going to have a lot of sales. If it sucks, they might be screwed after that. But like whatever's next is going to get a lot of hype.
Yeah. Well, I even think that there's going to be like probably 2 or 3 major DLCs just for Elden Ring itself, and I wonder what those are going to be. Like, is it going to be like, hey, there's that one like cloud that's still in the middle of the map where all of the if you draw, I saw it on Twitter, if you draw a line connecting all of the different like divine towers where you reactivate the runes that you get from the demigods, they cross over on that cloud, and it's like, is that where the DLC is? Is there what's there?
Honestly, probably.
Like, is there something there? Are we gonna get like there's this weird sub story where a bunch of people like left the island, like the Tarnished left, and they went. I think they went south. And so if you go down to the southern shore, there's like crashed boats all over the place, and there's like zombies walking out of the water, and it's like, okay, well, what's the story there? Like, is there more to find out in that direction? Like the lore of this game is so interesting that there's so many different directions they could go with potential DLC.
Good, though. That's cool.
Yeah, that I'm like,
yeah.
There's just so many possibilities that I don't even know like which I would prefer. Like I can't even take a guess because there's so many options.
Well, my thing too is like honestly at this point I'm like, Jesus, take the wheel, because this was such a damn good game and they did such a good job at like making so much stuff. I don't care. I don't care if they go, you know what? Nah, even though the island looks cool and the ships, F that. We have like a little pony island that you didn't even know about. We didn't talk about. But here where you're going to, I'd be like, I'm in.
Well, because that's the thing, right? Though, like I think about like the worst DLC in history, right? And the first one that comes to mind is always Horse Armor.
Or Horse Armor.
It's always Oblivion Horse Armor. And here's the thing: getting some armor for Torrent would actually be pretty cool.
Yeah, dude. Look, dude, they could charge $50. I'm there, baby. Like,
you know what I mean? Like, I feel like no matter what they do with the DLC of this game, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, no, 100%. My only concern is, I guess it's not. It's funny because this concern is basically being like, it's just too good. But like, imagine if they do come out with like 3 or 4 DLCs, and like you play this game a decade from now, because like there's like this is one of the greatest games ever made, especially with all the DLC. Dude, so what is the base game like 100 plus hours? Then you got DLCs that are all like 20, and they're like all interconnected. Like I just couldn't even imagine a decade from now playing this game like the definitive edition remaster when it comes out in a decade. You know,
which it will.
Like, there will be a remaster with all the DLCs, and for anyone that hasn't played it, I just couldn't imagine that undertaking. It would be like, oh, dude, this is going to be another jump. Like yeah,
this is a
entire
game
year,
that is
walk out the
so
whole
big that it's like I think it's the highest rated game on Metacritic ever. You know, it's a
yeah.
game that came out and buried a first party PlayStation exclusive to the point where nobody talks
It's
about
just
it
really
anymore.
good. And the game's really good,
Like,
dude.
and that other game's great. Horizon's great. I did a
Could you
review on
imagine
Horizon. Watch it. It's good.
sucks. No, and I haven't played it, but it looks amazing, bro. And dude,
Yeah.
those devs are so good. I couldn't imagine making such a great game, putting so much hard work, and then just being like, everyone's like, yeah, but Elden Ring just came out, so
But
like,
Elden Ring though.
you're done. Like,
Right.
any game would have been completely bodied.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. But like
every game
the
around
fact that this
body.
game took over the way it did, it's like this game is absolutely going to be remade. This is a game that like
No, you know that
like
already.
everyone compares this game to Breath of the Wild, which I hate, but I understand. Like the fact that it is a big open world game where you can sort of go and yeah, it's like because both of them are big open world games where you can go in whatever direction and do whatever you want, and like I get that, but I feel like Elden Ring does it so much better.
Yeah, I played a little bit of Breath of the Wild. I think it's kind of overrated, but don't want to
For
get
sure.
too many angry people in the comments.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I will die on that hill with you because I agree.
Oh, you think so too? Okay.
Like
yeah.
because that's the thing that people always say about Elden Ring, or about Breath of the Wild rather, is that like you can go in any direction and do anything and you'll always find something, but like in that game it's like I found a puzzle and there's 3 bowls here and 2 of them have apples in it, and if I put an apple in the third one, then a little plant man pops up and goes ho ho ho, and he gives me what is literally a little tiny golden piece of poop. And it's like,
Bro.
okay, and there's 900 of those. And it's
Don't
like,
even
that's
get
what it always is. Or I can find a new weapon, but I'll hit something with it 4 times and it'll break. And it's like, I feel like Elden Ring just does that so much better. Where you'll find a new dungeon and there's a new boss down there, or you'll find a new weapon and it completely changes the game. Like you'll find rivers of blood and it's like, whoa.
Yeah. No, like you said, one weapon completely changes the lane. One lore thing, and you're like, oh my god, or you find a new zone. Like Breath of the Wild, there's a lot of cool exploration, or there's a lot of exploration, but to me, it's just like, oh, but everything I'm doing sucks. Like, I just don't want to do any of this though. Like, but Elden Ring, it's like I don't know. But anyways,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's so interesting. It'll be interesting to see how this like changes the gaming landscape. I feel like because
Yeah.
the other thing is like. I think it changes so much. One, it shows like hardcore experiences. Like gaming is absolutely mainstream. Hardcore experiences are mainstream. Like we're getting near Call of Duty numbers on a game that's a
Right.
Dark Souls like, which is insanity. Like think of like at selling like Call of Duty. Like literally just think about that for a moment. Like the behind Call of Duty is super hardcore fantasy, barely know what's happening because it's such convoluted quests, insanely
Right.
hard bosses where it's like super slow and like, that's what the mainstream, which is gaming, that's one of their big boy, like, you know what I mean. So gaming, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity for studios to try. I hope for them to be like, yo, Elden Ring got big, we can do that crazy idea we wanted that you guys said wouldn't sell because it wasn't mainstream. Hard games people are going to want, how open worlds are designed, like how combat designed, just so many things, like what's going to happen to the industry. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. One of the reasons why I specifically wanted to talk to you about it is because this is your first time playing a Souls game, and so I'm wondering like I know that this has become sort of one of your favorite games of all time really fast, but I'm curious, like, is this the sort of thing where it makes you want to go back and like play some of those older games? Is it the sort of thing where like all of a sudden you're like how does this change the way that you look at from those games? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I 100% as a new player, I have so much more respect, and I get it. The best thing I could say is I get it now because I never really played Dark Souls before. I played Bloodborne for like 5 minutes on a buddy's PlayStation a while back, and I'd never played Sekiro, right? And I was just like, not for me. Like I'm not a huge fantasy guy. Like it just looks slow and boring. If I'm going to be completely honest, that's truly what I thought. But like this game, 100%, I get it now. Like now, I'm like, damn, I want more bosses. I want more moments like that. I want to go back to Dark Souls and like be like, damn, this is what it was before they made Elden Ring. You know what I mean? My only concern with going back would probably be like, damn, maybe I miss the open world. Damn, I did like Elden Ring. I liked all the how you could change your weapon and like, oh, I liked jumping. Because I saw someone commenting about it actually. That was a big Dark Souls fan. He's like, the only thing I hate now is, and he was saying, and I don't know if this would be the case for me, but he was like, when I go back to like Dark Souls 1, I'm like really annoyed I can't jump and do like the jump hits. And that was just a small thing for him. But it's kind of like the Halo Infinite effect for me, even though I know both of us campaign wise, we don't love that game. But
Yeah, for sure.
the gameplay was so good, I retroactively went back and played Halo 2 and 3 because I was so excited after Infinite, right?
Mm.
And I was just sitting there, I was like, damn, like no grapple hook. Like,
Really use a grapple hook though.
God, shooting feels better in the new one. Like, you know what I mean? It just So I would be concerned that I would go back and be like, damn, amazing games. I see how this spawned Elden Ring, but like Elden Ring's the GOAT now. Like I don't want to go back and play the what led up to the GOAT because that's just not my style. But I do really want to go check out those games, especially Bloodborne. That's the one that interests me for some reason a lot. And Dark Souls 3 everyone talks about too.
Right.
But those games look fantastic, and I think it'd be interesting to see like the designs when they first started. Like, oh, this is just like this boss in Elden Ring. That's where they got that idea. Like, interesting. This is how they changed it. Honestly, they're definitely one of the GOAT studios in the industry right now.
For
One
sure.
because they're so unique. They make absolutely quality games. The scale is massive, and they're just in their own lane, and they're fucking crushing it. And honest respect. Like I said, it's one of my favorite games ever. Now, top 5 for sure.
It's so good, like so gratifying as someone who's been a Souls fan for like since Dark Souls 1. To see it just like take off to this new level, because like I said, I don't necessarily know exactly what it is about this game that had it take off more than the other games, because like I think I still prefer Bloodborne, I think I still prefer Dark Souls 3, but this game is like straight up a 10 out of 10. Right, like it's so good. And hearing people just like who never gave Souls games a chance before, or like, you know, seeing all the review scores come in and having people just like making all kinds of content about this game, it feels super gratifying, because I'm just like, I'm sitting over here like, that's what I've been trying to tell you the whole time.
True. No, dude, I totally get that. Like, I couldn't imagine being like, because I guess they weren't really, I wouldn't say they're niche. They were pretty niche, but like, there are a lot of people who were Souls fans though. But like, they were a niche, way more niche than they are now. So like, seeing that hit the mainstream, the equivalent would be like, I'm a huge fan of Cyberpunk, right? I think that game's always been amazing underneath all the bugs that they've been fixing. And but the dream would be one day, after the first DLC, people wake up and they're like, this game's absolutely fantastic. What are people talking about? I'd be like, I told you all along. Like, I imagine that's how you feel about Elden Ring, right? You're like, I told you FromSoft was the GOATs. Like, I told you, bro. Like, I've been saying this since back in the day, you know? I'm pre-K.
Yeah. Oh, it's wild, because like it's crazy how, because you know, we're in a time of like crazy acquisition rumors all the time, you know,
and they're all happening.
Right. And it's so funny to see like the second Elden Ring came out, like no one talking about FromSoft at all, and then Elden Ring comes out and it's like, rumor, PlayStation's gonna buy FromSoft, Xbox is gonna buy FromSoft. It's like Tencent is gonna buy FromSoft. Like now all of a sudden, like it's hit that point where like all the insiders on Twitter are like, oh, they're gonna totally buy that now, because like now all of a sudden it's a studio that matters to them. It's so funny.
No, it's a good compliment. If people are making, you getting caught out, and you're like, we made it. Like, let's go. But that would be interesting if someone buys FromSoft. That's gonna be crazy. Especially after Elden Ring, because that'd be like, oh, that game's so damn good.
Right. I always hope that nobody buys them though, to be honest, because like when I see studios getting bought, when I see studios getting bought, it's, you know, and it's something like Bethesda or Activision or Insomniac or Bungie, whatever. A lot of the times I feel like those are studios that have sort of already gotten really big, and they've been big for a long time, and like they know what they are, right? Whereas I feel like FromSoft is like just starting to really hit its stride, and I want it to continue to like grow on its own and maybe become its own thing. Like I see FromSoft maybe even growing to the point where like they, or I guess more accurately their parent company Katakawa, like grows to be the next big publisher. Like people keep talking about like, oh, Xbox has bought Activision Blizzard, they bought Bethesda, they're taking all these publishers off the board, so the industry is shrinking. And it's like, well, no, look at people like FromSoft, look at people like Capcom or whoever. These are people who could grow up to be the next Activision, could be the next Bethesda, you know what I mean? And so I almost hope that they don't get acquired.
Actually, I totally see what you're saying now, because they are that studio that's like just at the cusp, or not even the cusp. They just started their big. This is their moment. This is their like Blizzard moment of having World of Warcraft or what, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? Or like, or Naughty Dog finally coming out for Sony and just crushing it. It's like, yeah, this is their big moment. I'd be down for like, you know, things like, oh, this next game's on Game Pass day one, but everywhere else too. I mean, that stuff obviously would be cool. But.
Right. Like I could definitely see, and I'd almost guaranteed at this point that like their next game or something like that, like they're going to be making exclusive deals with Xbox and PlayStation. Bloodborne 2 might be coming. Like I can see that happening, and I'd be thrilled for that.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, hell yeah, FromSoft, get your money, dude. Like you deserve it.
True. Yeah, get that. Yeah, but they're getting a lot too with Elden Ring. So
absolutely.
Good. Oh yeah, they're making good money. Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to, I guess, see where the industry goes. But I completely agree with you. I think this is the thing people don't realize. Like, even with all the acquisitions and stuff going on, there's always more FromSofts coming, man. There's more. I'll give you another example, man. So Arcane's one of my favorite studios, right? Mm-hmm. Arcane Austin specifically. And the guy that made Prey, the creative director, he left and he started a new company called Wolf Eye Studios. And they just came out with a game called Weird West. And I've been playing more and more of this game. I was second playthrough, and the more I play it, the more I'm like, oh my god, like this game is fantastic. And in my head I'm like, if they like just hire more people, make just enough off the Game Pass deal, and like make their next game, they make like a Prey or something, like this could be the next Arcane. This could be like a next big studio butting in. There's always something big coming in. So even if these companies are getting swallowed, something cool is always coming. And more than just FromSoft and everything, I literally don't think there's ever been a more exciting point in video games ever, dude. You've got FromSoft making a hardcore fantasy RPG that's selling like Call of Duty, dude. You got Call of Duty Studios saying they're going to be working on new games now. You've got a Game Pass for like $10 a month. You get everything. Mm-hmm. You've got like absolutely amazing RPG. Starfield, the first big space opera since Mass Effect, has been like decades. It's like it's never been so exciting. Sony just pumps out banger after banger. Like Elden Ring to me, like solidified, like this is the golden era. Like this is such a good point in games that this game did so well, and it was so good and so polished. Like there's so many bad things that people don't like NFTs and stuff, but I'm telling you, overall gaming's so good right now.
Absolutely. Because it's that thing, right, where like I feel like everybody looks at these really big acquisitions, right, and they think about it as taking something off the table, but what they don't see is the next course coming to fill that gap, right? They don't see the power vacuum that Activision Blizzard getting taken off the table creates. It allows people like FromSoft or like Supermassive, or which one's the one who did Hades? Is that Supermassive or Supergiant?
Supergiant, I think it's
Supergiant.
I could be wrong though.
Yeah, or Supergiant or whoever. Like these other really, really talented studios then are able to sort of grow into that space. And I think that's what makes this time in gaming so exciting, because we're seeing consolidation, yes, but it's also opening up opportunities for other studios that who knows what they'll turn into.
And it's everything. Like Unreal 5 just came out, absolutely amazing engine. There's so many possibilities even for indie studios to make these amazing, like I could talk for hours about like whenever anyone's like gaming is dead, it used to be so much better. I just can't. I'm just like, I'm so triggered. I'm like, you're so wrong, but whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can talk about this for hours, man. And right. FromSoft's a perfect example of that, man. You can't look at Elden Ring and tell me something special isn't happening right now. I don't know. That's just me though.
Yeah. So. Oh no, absolutely. Well, that's basically everything that I wanted to talk to you about, and then some, to be honest.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we had a few topics.
Do you want to plug your stuff one more time, and then we'll get out of here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I know I already gave it out, but I'm Frankly Gaming everywhere, so my name's Frank, in case you didn't know. But yeah, I'm Frankly Gaming, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. I do like gaming review things and deeper dives, so like I have a Starfield video coming out about why I think it has a lot of potential Tuesday. I have some Elden Ring videos, and a Weird West video, I talk about that too, so... thank you guys so much. Yeah, me and Daniel talk all the time, so always down to come on, man. This was super fun. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that I want to do more videos like this where I bring people on to talk about stuff, because I feel like that conversational tone makes it feel just a lot more engaging, whatever.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like when you have like one other person there, at least, that you know what I mean, like kind of hit ideas.
For sure. But anyway, good. Thank you all for joining us. I hope this video wasn't too long for you. I hope you got something out of it. Let me know what you guys think about Elden Ring in the comments down below. Do all the things that all the YouTubers tell you to do. Like, share, subscribe. Do the same thing to Frank, because his channel is really good. Follow him. Like, go and find him. Tell his grandma to watch him on Facebook or whatever.
If you're not coming, send your grandma.
Absolutely. But until next time, I'll see you around.